Able to see you. All right, there we go. We've got that going on. Waiting for Dr. Lovechild, waiting for Monique to show up. We had a really great conversation with Tim, if you weren't aware. He talked a lot about how he's raising creative children. Hey, Kim, really nice to see you. How he's raising creative children. And I really think, Kimberly, if you didn't watch the Tim one, and I didn't think I saw your name, maybe watch that, because I think you'll get some real benefit from it, because he's someone who's super creative, and it also means that he's struggled to really fit into the world, to fit into how things work, because he wasn't the norm, and nobody knew what to do with him. Good. I'm glad. I think you'll like it. He's a pretty creative human being. Hey, Pamela, nice to see you. So while we're waiting for Monique, let's see. I like to pull animal cards a lot. It just gives me an idea of what's going on. And so I texted Monique to remind her. So hopefully it won't be a problem. Although in this business, you never quite know who's going to show up, who's not going to show up, and why. I really was pretty thrilled that Tim made it. There was a part of my mind that said, he's got to be feeling the underlying energies of what's going on everywhere, because he's sensitive, he's creative, and he's got to be feeling these things. And because he's feeling them, I want to know how he's doing. I want to know how he's coping. I want to know how he's talking to his kids. I want to know how he's helping them through it, because they're sensitive and creative and, could be acting out. And, he's definitely, he's been struggling because of his own creative nature and sensitivity and trying to process through everything that's happening. And I think part of it is he sees things that other people don't see, because his brain works from a different perspective. And because it works from a different perspective, just like all of ours do, it's important to listen to what he has to say, because he can see things and understand things that I frankly don't think of living in Rita world. Good. I'm glad that you're still listening, Pamela. So yeah, I was wondering or worried that he might not show up, because I know how tough times like this can be for anyone who's sensitive. And so I'm glad I checked in with him. He's, struggling, but he showed up. I was like, oh, that's so great. Because when you struggle with emotional sensitivity or a highly sensitive nervous system, sometimes you just have to, tell people that it's, that you need a break, that you need space. You have to tell people that when you're highly sensitive, that you personally have to take care of yourself, because they don't get it. Okay, so we're pulling a card. Dun, 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 dun. So this afternoon will be Raven. I love Raven. So I know I had it somewhere. My animal speak book has disappeared. Well, Raven is a lot about, it was a messenger. It's about that creative aspect of life. It's about going into the dark and coming back with something new. And that's really what I've been feeling we've been doing this whole week. I mean, going into the dark, looking at these things that have been hidden or pushed down or ignored or repressed for a long time, and we're bringing them back. And we're bringing them back in a way that's magical, in a way that's healthy, in a way that's sustainable, in a way that supports each other. And what does that look like in your real life? It looks like you don't get as reactionary about things, or it looks like you feel proud of yourself because you stood up for yourselves. Kimberly says, sometimes even when you tell people, they still don't get it. I realized I need to take care of myself regardless of what others think. Yeah. And that's really it. Because at the end of the day, you are the one who's going to be most interested in looking out for you. As children, yes, that was our parents' job. Absolutely. But as adults, we're part of a community. We're part of a whole. And our job, our only job, is to make sure that we are the healthiest, most balanced person that we can be. Because as a natural side effect, when we do that, when we're in harmony, when we're in balance like that, then it brings harmony and balance to the people around us. As long as we're telling other people, we're not actually working on ourselves. So it's really important to get ourselves in balance, to get ourselves into alignment, to work, to get all these emotional issues off of us so that we can be authentic and we can speak sometimes very assertively and we can speak in very direct ways without turning it into a fight. And at the end of the day, even though you were assertive, you were still heartfelt and you were authentic and you were honest and innocent. That's the beauty of this work you guys have been doing all week, is it leaves you innocent at the end of the day. You haven't gone out and harmed anyone. You haven't taken your anger and used it on other people thoughtlessly, because sometimes anger is important, right? What you've done is you've learned how to not only get the past off of your system and clean it out, but how to be present in a very physical, grounded, loving sort of way. So let me make sure that all this was the way that it was supposed to be, because sometimes it doesn't. Dun, da, da, dun. Okay. Okay. Well, she should be here, so we'll absolutely see what's up. In the meantime, you get me. So I don't want to be an expert on this whole COVID thing, so I'm not even going to try. I'm looking at it from a perspective of the immune system. And when we keep ourselves balanced, then our immune system stays strong. When we are emotionally imbalanced, then our immune system gets weak and it can't defend ourselves from anything. So my focus throughout my whole career has been on wellness. How do we be the happiest, healthiest, most balanced, most nourished organism that we can be? And what's been neglected a lot of times is the emotional healing. And I can tell you without a doubt, over this last year, when I have really dedicated myself to cleaning up any emotional reactions I still had, because what would happen to me is I'd be of two selves. I would be the spiritual higher self, and then I would be the emotional physical self. And my spiritual higher self would always tell me, this is who you need to be as a person. You need to be good. You need to be compassionate. You need to be kind. And the other part of me was anxious and hurt and upset and forgotten and wounded. And what we do when we take the time to nourish ourselves first, it actually gets that divide. It starts to make that divide much smaller. And when we're not divided, our heart works better. Our brain works better, not just better, but now our brain, our heart, and our gut start working in alignment, which means that the works aren't gummed up. One of the nice things, usually, about buying a new car for me was always that, at least for a little while, I was fairly confident that I wouldn't have any problems with it. That just for a little while, I had a good chance of having a break from worrying about whether there'd be something wrong with the tires or the alternator or something in the engine, or will I have to take care of it? It gives you a breather from it all. And so the more I found that the more I put myself first, the more of a breather I can have. And the more of a breather that I have, the better everything starts to work. Everything starts to function as a team. And the bad things start to detox out of our system and come back. Hey, May, we're waiting for Monique. She was supposed to be here and I reminded her, but one never knows. So I hope she's okay. I hope everything is all right with her. And in the meantime, I'm sharing with you what I know about wellness. So our heart has the ability to read the wavelengths coming off of people. Our heart has the ability to not only send out wavelengths like a radio antenna, but also pick up wavelengths from other people. So recently, not even recently, it's been quite a few years now, they started to use water in computer chips. And they started to use water in computer chips because water holds and stores 100 times, 1,000 times, I don't know what the number is, more information than a traditional computer chip. Because water stores its information in a field around it. So they started using it in medical devices, drops of water as a database. Think about it. The majority of you is water. And because of that, that means that you have a database that's around you. And you're always sending out wavelengths and picking up wavelengths. And you're picking up data that's around some people and they're picking up data that's around you. We're very commingled. There really isn't much of a difference between all of us because we're all commingled in wavelengths and these fields and auras around us. Don't get me started on quantum physics. And so because of this, our heart is the main source of most of our information. In fact, the connections, the pathways between the heart and the brain, going from the heart and the brain, are way more numerous than the ones going from the brain to the heart. So the heart informs the brain and the gut informs the brain. So the brain makes decisions based on information the heart's picking up and based on the bacteria and organisms that live in our gut because they have a consciousness. It's almost like the Force and midichlorians. I mean, it really is. It's kind of wiggly that way. So our gut's talking to us, our heart's picking up information from the field, and then our brain processes it in our nervous system and our subconscious. So when we don't have any breakdowns, when the car works, it means that we can do things that we normally wouldn't be able to do if the alternator was always snapping off because the bracket was weak. Or that you constantly had to jumpstart your car because the battery hasn't been replaced. That's kind of how you've been living for a long time, as if a car that's a lemon, one that you're always repairing and always fixing and always trying to keep up on. When in reality, when you keep taking care of your emotions and your nervous system and getting your brain and your heart, your gut regulated, and you start making better choices around exercise then and food and how you cope with your emotions, when you start doing that, then everything comes into alignment. It works together and you're able to get where you want to go because you're not being held back. You're not continuing to break down along the way. And the emotions that are in us are kind of like putting sugar in the gas tank. It just mucks everything up. It slows down the system. It makes you sluggish. It means that nothing moves very well. You end up with a lot of achiness and inflammation. And then because of the inflammation, you end up with challenges with thinking in your brain. And so when we are out of alignment, when our heart isn't regulated, when we've got too many emotions going on, when our brain's constantly in fight or flight, of course, we're going to have the sort of tension and health problems and stress and anxiety that we're all going through right now. And your immune system will be lower because of it. When you are in a place of being stressed out, your immune system is suppressed. It stops working. And because of that, you can't fight anything off. Out in the environment, we're constantly in contact with things which could really, really make us sick all over the place. And one of the main differences between whether we get sick or whether we don't get sick with something is our immune system. So it's not just about making sure you drink juices, or, oh, I have to run a marathon and that's what I have to be doing. They've discovered in all areas, like exercise. I've started exercising 2 minutes a day, and that I'm feeling benefits. The research backs it up. I do 20 seconds on, 10 seconds off, 20 seconds on, 10 seconds off, and I do that for 2 minutes. You don't need a lot of the things that you need, and science is showing that you can kind of optimize for it. So I can do 4 minutes of exercise and get really great benefits from it. Hey, Lilo, nice to see you. And my immune system will end up being stronger, and I won't end up getting sick because of it. Or our heart rate, our heart rhythm is supposed to be variable. And when we're under stress, when have emotions mucking up our system, when we're shut down, our heart rate, it stays within a very small band. It doesn't have any resiliency. It doesn't have any ability to swing with the tides, to deal with, life that happens. So when we're dysregulated, it's short and spiky, almost when you want to talk about cold pricklies, warm fuzzies and cold pricklies. When your heart's in dysregulation, your body literally feels like a cold prickly. It's just not working. It's just out of sync. Oh, there's Monique. Yes, absolutely. Okay, so Monique's going to be here any minute. That's wonderful. So when you do these things, it gets your heart in sync, your brain in sync, and your gut in sync. And that's really what you want, because that's what's going to keep you healthy at the end of the day, is the fact that your body works. So many times you can be exposed to many things which will make you very sick, but some people will be okay and some people won't. And it all depends upon how much inner work you've done, how many emotions you've gotten off of your system, out of your gut, and out of your heart, whether your heart is able to adjust with the world. And your heart then controls all of these other systems. We're connected to them, the endocrine system, and as I said, the immune system. So our hormones are affected. We're a living organism. We're a living system. And we have to look at ourselves not as I have to fix this piece or I have to fix that piece, but how do I get everything working together? Because let me tell you, have you ever looked at a flower or at a seed and watched it? Remember when you were a little kid and you put a seed in the bag and with a wet paper towel, and you watched the seed start to grow? And you watched this seedling start to grow, and you were amazed. You said, how did this happen? This little plant was inside this little seed. Your body is exactly the same way. When you give it what it actually needs, when you give it love, care, compassion, nourishment, you're not fooling anybody. I know, and you know, that you are sacrificing way more than you're supposed to sacrifice. I know that you are running yourself down into the ground. I know that your emotions are clogging things up. And there's a part of you that says, this isn't who I want to be. This isn't how I want to live my life. Absolutely. There's a part of you that says that. And what gets in the way has always been your body. What gets in the way is your own body's health. And we're learning and we're seeing and we're showing that when you make that a priority, when you do put yourself first in a nourishing sort of way, you are miracles. I used to go to Vegas. I really do like Vegas, actually. I love the people, and I love the color, and I love the variety. It's neat. You can explore things in Vegas you can't explore other places. And so I would go to these shows, these Cirque du Soleil shows, where people were nude. And I would be completely fascinated because I'm watching their muscles move, because I know what's required. I know how muscles loosen and flex and stretch. And I know how the brain has to talk to things, and I can sense the blood moving through the body. And I would watch them do these things and just be astounded by how they worked and that they could do these things. And that's because they nourished themselves. They gave themselves what they need, and they were able to do miraculous feats. So I want you to start looking at yourself not as broken, but as a miracle, a potential that's waiting. And if you give it sunlight and new information, and you get the emotional stuff off, and you calm yourself down, and you hug a tree, and you take nice naps, if you do that, you're going to be smarter and more creative than you ever thought you were. Okay, let's get Monique on here. Dun, da, da, da. Hi. Hello.
Hi.
You're already live streaming, just so you know.
Yep, I'm so sorry I was running late.
No, that's okay.
Excellent.
I'm doing pretty darn good. This is, family is a big topic, and that's the topic for the day. And so we've had some big discussions around, raising creative children in this chaotic, energetic time that we're in, to how we deal with being a good role model for our family, energetically and emotionally, and setting boundaries. We've had great conversations around the energy that's going around. I mean, because we're not only in the middle of a pandemic, we were in the middle of a potential, of someone starting a coup. So this is a problem. There's a lot of dysfunction and dysregulation and a lot of things going on. And we're living through a very momentous time right now. And it's important, I think, to stay present to it and try to navigate it with as much health and grace that we can. At least that's my soapbox today.
Yeah, one of the beautiful things about doing family work is that if you can figure out how to live well within inside yourself, and then you can apply that to your children and your partners and your home, and then you can apply that out to the community. Like, as hard and as distracting as that outside world can be, the inside work is really where it starts. And there's neurology behind it. Like, if you know the mirror neurons, when I smile, you're more likely to smile. But there's so many more subtle things, especially because a smile is something we can control. Like, there are lots of things that are mirror neurons that are looking at one another and kind of figuring out how the situation needs response to. And some of those things we're picking up on, those cues in the environment, are really even unconscious. And they do come from our own family of origin, right? Like, if you grew up with slammed doors, that means something different to you than someone that didn't. And
right.
So,
for a long time, I would get anxious when I would hear footsteps on a floor above me. So no matter where I was, no matter what house I was, no matter what building I was in, if I heard footsteps on the floor above me, I would immediately start to get anxious. My heart would beat faster, and I would trigger, and I'd have to try to calm myself down, or be like, okay, the footsteps stopped. All right, I'm okay. I can relax.
For me, it was, if the only exit between you and I is blocked, especially by you, if you're upset at me. Like, and that one took a while to figure out that, like, oh, I just need to be near an exit. Even if I'm with someone that I trust, if we're having a hard situation, it's really helpful if that path to exit is not blocked.
Right.
I think kids too, when I talk to parents, I talk to them about how they learn much better from modeling than they do from things you tell them. Right? So it's really hard to tell them don't smoke if you're smoking. But it's easy for you, if you're willing, to sit and read a book as they do homework, to model that. Let's turn off all of the media and get something done that is different than media. Right?
To be an adult, to behave in a responsible way with your kids. to raise them into a, you know, a contributor into society and self-actualize themselves.
Yeah. So I think modeling is super important, more important than we give credit for helping those kids be creative. Like, don't just get them coloring tools, but sit down and color with them and have that shared experience. Because as you find access to your creativity, they'll find access to their creativity. As you don't like a particular picture and how it turned out, you're teaching them how to deal with those expectations without turning it inward or outward. Maybe turning
So
it into
I have a question for you, and I don't want to forget it, which is why I'm like, oh yeah, I have to ask this question. So I've studied family relationships and raising children. I mean, I have a degree in elementary education, and I used to teach kindergarten. So, I mean, I love this stuff about how the brain develops, how we grow, how we transform. Education's, really in my system. And what I'd heard was that the Inuit, to teach their children, empathy, if they saw their children doing something that was, unkind or thoughtless to someone else, they wait, and then they would take them aside later on, and they would reenact the situation, except, the mother or the parent would be the injured party, and they would react authentically, so that the child would know, when you do this, this is how it authentically affects someone. Is this who you want to be? Now, I thought that was, brilliant. And I didn't know if you'd heard of anything like that.
I think that's absolutely beautiful. That's not a parenting style that I've seen up here, but I can certainly imagine one nuclear family making a decision, because that's where it really comes down to, making a decision to create a different kind of household, a household that is nurturing and helpful to everyone. So we have areas, unfortunately affected by missionaries, where sexual assault towards children started. And it's so rampant that we have communities where like 80% of the kids are sexually assaulted. And so,
wow,
right? Where culturally it's almost like, why didn't I get assaulted? And there's been some lovely work. Yeah, there's been some lovely work within the healthcare system, the Indian healthcare system up here, to try and create what's called, it's something warriors. And what they're trying to do is to talk to the elders and communities to try and figure out, okay, what didn't work in your childhood and how can we eradicate it in the next generation? So when you convince the elders who have lived through that kind of culture that maybe some of those impacts can be averted, they're more likely to monitor and watch their own children and how they behave towards their grandchildren. So when you talk about a community change, you really have to look at where we start and how you can implement that in a way that is welcomed. Like when I did aid work down in Bolivia, it was about creating sustainable change in communities where the change we were creating was what the community asked for, right? And so how do you create that collaboration around sexual assault? And so the Inuit teaching or parenting style you were describing is beautiful. I'd love to see that in more homes. It does depend a little on how that reenactment gets done. I'd want to make sure we're not shaming, and it depends on the child you're working with. So I personally have not been exposed to that. So sorry, Rita. But there's work to be done.
Okay. Well, of course, and we've been talking about how health and wellness, it starts with the community, it starts with the elders and the grandparents. And I mean, that goes for having a healthy community overall. And I was talking about, before you hopped on, about how when we get everything into alignment, when we make choices to stay level and calm, and we do things to kind of connect our brain and our heart and our gut, we start to thrive, and we're able to stay healthy. We're able to be well, even in difficult circumstances, because our body has the ability to fight off, what comes, because we really are miracles. We're astounding miracles that are breathtaking when you sit and think about that we're alive.
It is amazing that all of those processes worked out to create a healthy baby. Like, I think the worst thing would be to try and study genetics while you're pregnant, because there are so many things that can go wrong that somehow end up working correctly. So we are a super complex system, right? As far as promoting health, the way I like to look at most spirituality or kind of advice type things is this going to do any harm, and could this possibly help? So for example, if you're going to do whatever you were suggesting, will it keep you healthy? I'm not sure. If you get sick, will it help you go through that illness with more grace and tolerance for yourself and your body? Absolutely. So like, I think it's a psychologically good habit to form, period, to have that collaboration with your body, so that when something goes awry, you're not fighting against that system. Instead, you're trying to figure out, where can I help this move along? How can I adapt so that I can move along with more happiness and nurturance in my life?
That's a beautiful way to state that.
Oh, thanks.
So how do you think these ideas and philosophies have to do with the fact that we're in the middle of a pandemic that's getting, that's been pretty bad for a long time, and a lot of people are getting sick, and a lot of people are dying, and a lot of people are getting adrenal fatigue, and domestic violence is up, and child abuse is up, and the world's kind of going to hell? How does all that apply?
Oh, that's a good question. Don't you get to the heart of things? So I'm just a person. I'm not God. I'm not in charge. There are a lot of the things you just stated in there that I could go down a rabbit hole of powerlessness and inability to act. And so what I recall is on 9/11, I was scheduled to be in the pediatric cardiology unit, outpatient unit. So we didn't even know if people would come. And of course, most people didn't. We had a lot of no-shows that day. But some people did, right? Either they hadn't heard the news or it was important enough. And I remember looking at my professor and being like, what are we supposed to do? And he was like, the point of terrorism is to interrupt what I was doing. And so I'm going to see the patients that I'm scheduled to see.
That's profound. That's deep.
Right? I mean, I got goosebumps when I said it, which for me, that's one of the signs that when I'm connecting, what I experience is that higher power, that highest self, whatever you want to call it. When I start parroting their words more clearly than mine, I get goosebumps, which is kind of a cool experience. But anyway, right, those are profound. Terrorism is meant to interrupt what I am doing, and so I will continue to complete my role as best as I can.
Wow.
And not give them that power. And it's hard because we were still in the reality of 9/11 and we still needed to deal with all of those feelings inside, but continue with that role. And I really tried to do that in the pandemic. Like, I can proudly say that in my particular clinic, which is wonky and unique, just like me, right? I have my patients, I've been around 11 years. I have continued to serve my patients. I am still taking new patients on occasion. I have not rescheduled because of this. I've moved online. I've limited face-to-face. So like, as much as I can, I'm trying to keep everyone safe, but I'm also making sure that the role of a pediatrician, which is what I had been doing for 10 years at my particular clinic, 20 years total, that I just keep chugging along day by day, trying to figure out how to help families navigate not only these crazy times, but the craziness of having a 2-year-old in your house for the first time. If you've never been around a toddler, that's a whole experience, right?
Right. Life keeps going on no matter what's happening around us. Things are still happening, and babies are still being born, and tantrums are still happening in the grocery store. I mean, no matter what, life just continues on. And how do we, I've been likening myself to a fish like the last day. And I'm like, I'm like a fish. I'm swimming in this flow, in this river, and I'm looking for getting my needs met, knowing that they'll be met. I just need to look for the opportunity to get them met, knowing that I'll probably find food, but I have to keep looking, until I find it, but it's there. Knowing that if I need shelter, I just have to look for it, maybe plan a little bit, but it's there. Not doubting that I'm in a stream of life. I'm in a flow of things that are happening. And if I recognize that and see that I'm part of something way bigger than me, then I can work with it rather than consistently being angry or frustrated or overwhelmed that that things don't look like the way I wish they looked.
Yeah. There's a great saying. Unfortunately, I don't think I've been able to find the person that said it originally, but the idea that faith is believing that there will be solid ground on which you can stand in your next step, or you will be taught to fly. Right. And so being creative in how we deal with these steps that feel unsteady, knowing that there is a backup that is greater than us that will teach us how to fly if these unsteady steps don't work out. But I like to pair that with the Asian notion of, am I willing to sit still in the muddy waters long enough to see what the next step is? Because in my life, I find often I am the one flailing around the waters and I'm wondering why I can't see what the next step is. Well, I haven't sat quietly to let that muddy water settle so that I can see the next right step. And in my personal experience, stringing together the next right step repeatedly has allowed me this grace. When I look back at things that don't work out well, I can still be like, you know what, I did the best I could at the time. So
right. And I when I would teach kindergarten, I knew that these children that I was talking to and impacting and caring about, that there was a very good chance they would never remember me ever again in their life. And I did it because I knew I was planting seeds and I had to have faith and belief that by planting the seeds, I hoped as many as possible would grow and they would grow into healthy, happy, balanced people. And so it was this understanding that what we're doing right this moment is directing us and nourishing our future self. So even if we don't see things right now, we're shaping our lives. We're already making the decisions which will impact our life in 5, 10, 15, 20, 25 years, or even generations down the road. We're already making those decisions, and to make them with as much centeredness and grace as we can, with an eye on the bigger picture, on that flow, on the river that we're in.
That's beautiful. If it helps at all, can I share a story of my kindergarten teacher?
Yes.
So my family of origin at the time, I didn't know, was not typical. There was just more violence and more unpredictability. But, she was a nice lady, and that was really all I remembered. Probably planted seeds, like you said. But if you had asked me about her, I might have been able to tell you her name. I might have been able to tell you she was nice. There's a little bit of a longer story about how I had to repeat kindergarten, but that's fine. So I got her 2 years in a row. Fast forward, I am in high school. This is late high school. I'm driving myself and I'm at the Blockbusters. And I run into her and I give her a hug. And she must have worn the same perfume or used the same shampoo. But immediately I had this olfactory memory. The smell reminded me from my core of how nurturing and safe and wonderful of a person she was. And at the time I was in high school, I didn't even know there were olfactory memories. I didn't know how smells hit your primitive brain faster than anything else. And so let me assure you, at least in my own personal experience, I think those seeds you planted absolutely did something.
Oh yeah, and I have all that, just like you with the babies that you nurture and nourish and bring into the world. You don't know how you're sending out those kisses and prayers and love, you don't know where to land, but you know that it'll land, and you just send it with all of that joy that you can, and to do your part to raising a healthy generation.
Yeah.
So what's the latest info on COVID? Because you keep track of that way closer than I do.
Oh, that is hard. I mean, again, it's like a spoke with 100 different topics you could talk about within it.
Pick the one that you wish that you could get across to the women in this group. What do you think is important for them to at least know so that they can make good informed decisions?
That until we get this under control, the best thing we can do is quarantine as hard as we can, as hard as we did in March, if not harder. That wearing masks and washing hands and social distancing and being really conscious of who we are with in a bubble is super important. We know how to mitigate and minimize this disease without any other interventions. And that will minimize the people that are going to die. And as soon as we get vaccines out, getting everyone protected as quickly as possible, with the knowledge that this is a coronavirus is a type of virus that does mutate, just like the flu does. So just like you would take a flu shot every year, I think we're going to end up taking a corona shot every year. And I think it'll be the most common strains. And they will revamp that vaccine each year. And the purpose of either the flu shot or the coronavirus shot, the way we do that, is not that it protects 100%, but that even if you get the disease, it becomes a more minimal disease that doesn't require hospitalizations, that is less likely to lead to dysfunction afterwards.
So this is a synthetic vaccine, right?
So, I mean, it depends what you mean by synthetic.
Yeah, I don't know. I just know it's a word that's been tossed around.
Yep. Synthetic is a word that just means made. So in that sense, it is synthesized. All vaccines are synthesized. But I think what the person might be getting to is that these first two vaccines, the Pfizer and Moderna one specifically, are mRNA vaccines. And so they use a technology that is different and new. It may be the best technology, right? It may be that 20 years from now, all of our vaccines are made that way. But I don't know that yet. There are some coronavirus vaccines coming out later, the AstraZeneca one, as well as the Johnson & Johnson one, that are more consistent with the technology we were using for other vaccines, specifically either the purified protein method, which is where you take a piece, in this case, one of the spikes, and show it to the immune system in order to induce an immune response. And so, do I trust the current vaccines? Yes, I trust that they create protection. When we look at the anaphylaxis inside of these vaccines, there are about 11 cases in a million. And so you're about 10 times more likely to have an anaphylactic reaction, which is an allergic reaction that we know how to treat. It's about 10 times more likely than the flu shot. So is it more dangerous than the flu shot? It does appear to be. And I think some of these conversations end up being more nuanced. And depending on the audience you're speaking to, there is a pervasive in the world, and no offense to you at all, Rita, but especially in the world where we're talking about metaphysical healing and kind of spiritual, whether it's massage or acupuncture or any kind of alternative healing, I think within that culture, there is a higher percentage of what I call anti-vaxxers. People who feel that their knowledge in their particular field can be applied into vaccines. And that anti-vaxxer movement, that anti-science movement, is really, if you look at, really associated with QAnon and the riots we just saw and the American terrorists that we saw in DC. They hooked up with the anti-vaxxers, and there's overlaps in those Venn diagrams. I'm not saying that every acupuncturist is against vaccines. That's not true. My acupuncturist just got vaccinated for COVID. I was just talking to her yesterday. And so there are people that are reasonable in what they know and apply it judiciously and still believe in science and still walk around these metaphysical parts of the world in their own truth.
I
But
know,
that,
I know a lot of people get it, and you must be in the middle of this all the time. With you're in Alaska, you're working with a hot topic, like whether you vaccinate your children or not, and what's behind it, and what are some of the things that you're seeing? How are you handling the at times very valid opinions that both sides have?
yeah, I mean, I think I start with acknowledging that any parent that hesitates for whether or not we should do something to their child, like that is a healthy and normal response. We want you to protect your child. We want you to have questions about what we're going to do and why we're going to do it, and what are the benefits and what are the risks. I give a whole nother hour lecture on vaccine hesitancy and kind of how we created this cloud of suspicion. But what I really try to do is walk through where the fear is for the parent. And they're like, well, I'm afraid the vaccines might cause some damage. I'm like, okay, what damage? Like, go out and do that research. Let's take your research and my research and go face to face and kind of compare them. And I believe
that's part of what this week is about. Is we all have different opinions, we all have different perspectives and points of view, and it's not about one person being right and somebody else being wrong. It's about an emotion coming up, and when an emotion comes up, and I knew today would be triggering for a lot of people in a lot of ways, because we're talking about family. This is core stuff, and so the whole, just remember, everybody, that when emotions come up for whatever reason, it's not about deciding who's right, who's wrong. It's about dealing with the emotions that you have around it, and then seeing what the deeper truth for you is. So it's not about denying your own intuition or saying someone's right and somebody else is wrong. It's about you clearing out of the way any emotions that we have around it, anxiety or anger or fear or rage or frustration or irritation, whatever it is. We have to clear that out first, and then make up our own minds for ourselves about what's right for us and what's right for our family. Because there's so much fear around all of this, and people are trying to make decisions based on what somebody else is telling them. Whereas when we're able to get balanced and come to a more level state, we can hear ourselves more clearly, and we can hear our intuition better, and we can make healthier decisions for us and our family. At least that's kind of the direction that I come from.
I think you're absolutely right. I think when we get triggered, it's an opportunity to, years ago, someone gave me the concept of thanking the trigger or button. That was the word. If someone pushes my buttons, I'm supposed to thank them and figure out how to tuck my button in, because they're my buttons. I am supposed to figure out where they are and tuck them in appropriately, and only let the people that I trust push those buttons. And when those buttons get pushed, kind of examine like, oh, well, what's going on? And I've definitely had heated conversations with people who don't agree with me on vaccines. I do fall back on the notion that we can all have our own opinions, but we can't have our own facts. Like there just have to be some facts. And so the fact is that when polio was around much more, a third of kids died, a third of kids were paralyzed, and a third of kids were okay. And that's not good. We don't want a third of kids dying. We don't want a third of kids paralyzed. Like, I know some older adults that lived through polio.
Me too. I had clients that lived through polio, and they were affected by polio, and their whole life was changed.
Their whole life is changed by polio, and it's a deep injury that, you can bring them back to baseline and accepting where they are, but you're not going to be able to get rid of the consequences of that disease, right? It's literally lifelong. And so we were, before COVID, on the cusp of eradicating polio, just like smallpox. Like, we were down to like 4 documented cases in Afghanistan, right? And Afghanistan has been hard to vaccinate throughout history because of the mountains and because of the conflicts that are there. We've now set back in polio. Polio's reached out because it's contagious. If it's left to spread, it's gonna spread. And especially with this new variant of COVID, this new variant is more contagious than the old one. It seems to still have the same amount of mortality. And so people are like, oh, only 1% of people die. I don't think you understand what happens when 1% of society dies. Like, we've got Native American traditions that are being lost because the elders are being wiped out, right? And that's somewhat on us. We didn't go and get all of the information before they died, but that's really hard when suddenly people are dying around you. And so I worry about the transmission of knowledge. Even in my own medical community, I've been doing this 20 years. Before COVID, that put me very much in the middle of my career. I've personally seen some doctors retire or decide, well, I was going to retire in 5 years, but this is crazy, or whatever. And like, just naturally, I feel like I'm getting pushed into an older generation of medical knowledge, even in my own community, because of this disease. And it's a lot. Like, there's going to be a lot of shift with this. So as seriously as we can take it, so they can come under control, is super important.
Yeah. Thank you for your really good advice and bringing your perspective and point of view to the table. These are touchy topics for people, and I like to respect what people feel is right for them. And usually what I just ask is that we clear our energy first, we clear our emotions, and then, yes, you know what is right for you, but clear out the things you've inherited, the ideas, the beliefs, the anger, the anxiety, clear that out. And then from a place of being centered, then make your decision. I always think that's the only thing I can really count on is connecting in with something that's bigger than me and listening to that wisdom and following that grace.
Yep.
Thank you, Monique. Thanks for hopping on. I really appreciate it.
Thank you again. I'm sorry I was late. Wonderful to see you.
No problem. It was wonderful seeing you. And I will see you in a few days too.
Yes. Take care. Bye.
Thanks, Monique. Bye.
I'm trying to leave.
Oh, I'll get you on. There you go. So what a controversial topic, right? This is something that people have strong opinions about, and they have a lot of emotional reactions about, because this is about family. This is scary stuff. This is about health of your family, safety of your family, and we have to respect. I always feel we have to respect our intuition. We have to respect ourselves, and we have to respect other people, because every perspective will have something that has truth and wisdom and something in it that it either gets us thinking in a new direction, or it adds to our thought process. We're never here to, we're always here to support each individual's unique interpretation of their highest self. That's what we're here to do. So I thank you. We've got our 8 o'clock tonight. I'll still be on. I absolutely thank you guys for keeping an open heart, for dealing or touching these scary issues around family, around children, around staying safe in COVID, about creativity, about all of that. It's not about shutting ourselves off. It's about getting ourselves centered so that we can see and hear and feel and stay open to things and make good decisions for ourselves, because our intuition, our clear intuition, will almost always give us the right answer. And starting to trust in that is what will make your life a lot better. So I'll see you again tonight. Thanks for being here. Thanks for stopping by. And cool. Tomorrow is all about spirit. We've got some great speakers coming tomorrow, so I'm excited. I'll talk to you later, guys. Bye.